Then when I was in England, there was an area, they said there's a fairy that lives in this one garden. And I'm like, yeah. And I went out there and I was like, whoa, there's something here. Okay. In Ireland, they call them leprechauns. In Scandinavian countries, they call them sprites and elves. So all over the world, I think it's the metahune in Hawaii. So this phenomenon has been observed or identified by pretty much every culture in the world. And so when I say elementals, that's just the term that I use for non-human spiritual intelligence that is more aligned with the elements, air, water, earth, than they're concerned with humans. Okay? And it doesn't mean they necessarily dislike us, but they're not necessarily concerned with us. I was at the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado, and it's on the top 10 list, I guess, of haunted locations in North America. And I was at a paranormal convention there, and I was one of the speakers. And so anyway, that night, they do ghost hunts. And of course, it starts at 10 p.m. And I'm one of these people, I want to be in bed by 11, that's, because I get up early and that's how I structure my day. But hey, it was a ghost hunt. And for everyone who hasn't been on a ghost hunt, do it. To go on a paranormal investigation, put that on your bucket list. It could be a lot of fun. There's a lot of waiting for stuff to happen.
Is it BS or is it real?
No, it's real. I mean, there was a lot of activity. Plus, the Stanley Hotel itself has their own paranormal team that's been studying this. Now, let me explain. Can I explain? When I encountered the elemental at Estes Park, we went down to the basement beneath it, and it's in this cave, and there was the paranormal investigator. What they did is they had about 6 or 7 different teams throughout because the Stanley Hotel is a big area. And so we were underneath it, and he had K2 meters, EVP, all these devices which pick up on infrared and electromagnetic energy and energy spikes. Everything starts going off the charts. So we're all looking at this. There's maybe a dozen people in our group. And at the end of this cavern is this undulating greenish silver light. And it was like, I don't want to say it looked like an eel, but you know how an eel kind of, when they swim, they do this ooh type of thing. But there's this silver green light gathering, and it has this undulating pattern to it. It was interesting because one of the guys that was with us, he worked for Disney special effects. He goes, this is no special effect. He goes, we can't do this. Okay, because he was talking to Rocky, he goes, we can't do this. And so I thought, well, I'm going to walk into it. So I'm walking up to it, and I'm like, as I'm walking into this, and everyone's like, don't, Mark. Then I'm thinking, well, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. The Catholic in me starts coming out. But I felt my mother's presence with me. I felt Mom with me, my mother's spirit. And I thought, okay, everything's going to be fine. And all of a sudden it's like, hey, this energy feels just like the energy of that fairy that I connected with in a forest in England. It was the same type of feel. Okay, so here we call it an elemental. Over in the UK, they call it a fairy. And I got the distinct impression female. And she was like, she said, why are they so curious about me? Came into my head. Okay. And so, and so then this light changed pattern, and it started looking like this. Like when a lava lamp, it gets real warmed up and it starts getting like that. Well, it was enveloping me, and then it went over to the paranormal investigator and all his equipment. He goes, it's engulfing me. I go, she's studying you. He goes, why is she studying me? I go, why are you studying her? And he goes, God, I never thought of that. He goes, it works 2 ways. And so I was like communicating with her, and I said, we're not here to hurt you. We're just here to understand you. And then she was like, okay. So this was like, ooh, ghost hunt horror. And it turned into a curious female energy that wanted to know why humans were so fascinated with her.
And then used to be human, right?
No. That's what I'm saying. She's an elemental, a non-human spiritual intelligence.
Oh, now you just blew my mind. So there are other things besides.
I think that's what I just explained about elementals.
I didn't catch that. I thought.
All right, remember when I talked about commies, elves, fairies, metahune all over the world? Those are non-human spiritual intelligence. Okay, that's why I said in the spirit realm, it's not just people's spirits. There's animals, there's angelic entities, there's elementals, there's a lot of things that are there.
Where does an elemental come from?
Where does energy come from? Neither created nor destroyed, only transferred from one form to another. That's why I'm saying humans are on this frequency, elementals are on a different frequency, angels are on another frequency, the other side, spirits are on another frequency, and sometimes these frequencies overlap. And people say, oh, it sounds crazy. It's like, really? Look at an FM or an AM dial. It goes, FM goes all the way from 87.5 all the way up to 107.9. There's a lot of frequencies there. And sometimes they overlap and sometimes they don't. It's the same thing when we're interfacing and dealing with spirits of human, non-human, angelic, and elemental. So this entity that we encountered at the Stanley was a female elemental who was just as curious about us as we were about her.
So basically, if you were going to describe an elemental in a layman term, you'd say fairy or
Tinkerbell. Tinker. Okay.
For real?
Where do you think those came from? See, when people see elementals in a forest, a lot of people think, oh, well, that's a lightning bug or a firefly. Then they get up closer to it, and it isn't. It's like an orb of light. People always describe spirits as an orb, a ball of light. Sometimes they're human spirits, and sometimes they're not. And so that's where all these concepts of fairies, elves, metahune, kami. Remember I was saying in Japan, they have shrines to these very powerful spirits. They weren't people. The Japanese believe that they're in the Shinto religion, that they're gods. But I felt that because when I encountered, I went to a Shinto shrine and encountered that energy, it had the same feeling as the fairy that I encountered in England and the elemental that I encountered in Estes Park, Colorado. It's just a different entity, a different form of intelligence.
So what business, if any, does a human have with them, or lack thereof, or not?
Well, we don't really. That's what I'm saying. They're called elementals because they're more aligned with the elements. Earth, nature, water, okay? That's what they're preoccupied with. We're humans. We're kind of preoccupied with each other and exploiting the elements. And maybe the elementals get annoyed at the way we deforest things. I mean, I don't want to get all airy-fairy about it, but I'm sure they get rather perturbed when we just go in and completely mow down a forest.